All right, good morning, second grade. Welcome to week 2. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see what it is we are going to be talking about this week. We are going to start learning about the myths. If you can think back to the cartoon Hercules, he is a Greek myth. It is a story of Hercules is a story about Greek mythology, and he is a Greek god. And so for the next couple days, or the next couple weeks actually, we are going to be learning about Greek mythology. So I thought this would be a good little video for you to watch. All right, so hopefully you know who I'm talking about. You know who Hercules is, and you know that he is a Greek god. Sorry, I'm just opening up the pictures just like we used to do with the Black History Fighting for a Cause one. So if you have not watched Hercules, I suggest you should, but let's go ahead and get started on this. So today our objective is to be able to describe the main characters of a myth and explain the characters' actions. So if we think about Hercules, we would be thinking about who he is as a character and why he does what he does. But today we are not talking about Hercules. In fact, I do believe, though, eventually we will get to talk about Hercules. But today we are going to read about, a little bit more. Sorry, thanks y'all for being patient with me. Today we are going to actually read a story about Daedalus and Icarius, who were also part of the Greek mythology. And we are going to learn about them. And then as we're reading, what I want you to think about is who they are as characters in the myth And I want you to think about why they're doing what they're doing in the story. So those are the things I want you thinking about as I'm reading this to you. All right, so here we go. This here says, this is a story of a very brilliant man, genius, whose name was Daedalus. He was able to look at a problem and think about it until he figured out the answer. Once, however, Daedalus faced a challenge he wished he did not have to solve. King Minos of Crete was upset with Daedalus for helping the young hero Theseus defeat the Minotaur and escape from Crete with his daughter, Princess Ariadne. This picture right here is a picture of King Minos. So thinking back to our objective, right now we already know that he is going to be a main character, right? This is a picture of one of the main characters, King Minos. The king had no proof or evidence that Daedalus had helped them, but he believed that only Daedalus was smart enough to have done it, since he had also created the labyrinth. Do you think the king was right? So what I want you to do right now is just stop and think like good readers do and think, do you think that his actions were right? Do you think that his actions were fair? Even though he didn't have any proof, was it okay for him to throw Daedalus into prison because he thought that he had did something? Do you think that, what kind of character do you think that makes King Minos? Do you think that makes him a nice character, a mean character? What are some adjectives that you could possibly use to describe the king right now? Just knowing what we've already read about the author, just reading already what the author has told us. Think about some adjectives that you could use to describe him. For me, I think about he's very stubborn. I think that the king is very harsh. I think the king is very mean. I think the king is very cruel. Looking at his appearance, he does look like a tall, scary man as a king. So those are some adjectives that I would use to describe him. All right, so we know of several main characters now. We know King Minos and we know Daedalus, who is the person he threw into prison. The king says, Daedalus, you helped them escape, so now I will lock you up. All right, let's go down to the next one. What does this look like to you? Just stop and look at it for a second. Because remember, even pictures can give us clues about what's happening in the story, or in this case, in the myth. Even pictures can give us clues about what we're about to read. So when I look at this, I think it looks like a tower. Is that what you thought? Yeah, so this is a tower. The king was too smart to lock Daedalus in an ordinary cell. However, because he feared that the genius might escape, he commanded, guards, lock up Daedalus and Arcas in that great stone tower that overlooks the ocean cliffs. There is only one window at the top of the tower and one door which we will lock. Even if they escape through the window, there is nothing below them but sharp rocks and raging ocean tides. Do you think that Daedalus and Arcas could escape from a place like this? Knowing about what the author just told us, he said, let's stop and think about what the author just said. The author said that there's one window at the top, which is what we're looking at, and one door. And at the bottom, there's nothing but sharp rocks and ocean tides. Do you think that Daedalus will be able to escape something like this? Tell your parent if you think so, and tell them why you think that or why you don't think that. Turn and talk to your parents. Ah, ha, ha. Miss G is so smart. All right, let's go to the next one. So looking at this picture, what do you think they're doing? I'm looking and I see a lot of books, but I don't know that that has anything to do with what's happening in the story. I see in his hand, I see feathers, it looks like, and I'm gonna make a connection with the feathers he probably got from the birds. And here is Daedalus, the older man, and this is his son who got locked up with him. All right. What do you think they're making? What do you think they're making? If you were locked up in a tower, what would you try to make out of these feathers? All right, so he and Arcas would set breadcrumbs on the sill, which is this part right here, the window sill. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here, let me get the pin. This is called a window sill right here. They would set breadcrumbs on the sill of the tower's highest window to attract seabirds. Over a period of months, the birds lost their feathers. The birds lost their fear of Daedalus and his son and would allow the men to pick them up. The father and son began to pluck the feathers from their wings. So do you think that these are the wings? The feathers from the wings that they were plucking, and they're gonna make their own wings? What do you think? Let's keep reading. The father and son began to pluck feathers from their wings, though not as many as it would hurt the birds or keep them from flying. He and Arcas hid the feathers under their bed along with some wax from each candle the soldiers supplied. After several years, he told his son, "Now we have what we need in order to escape." What do you think he's going to do with the feathers and the wax in order to escape, using what the author told us so far and this picture right here? What do you think? Turn and tell your parent. What do you think that he is going to make? All right, let's go to the next one. Daedalus tells his son, "If we can't walk from our prison, we will fly. Hold that candle closer to soften the wax so I can bend it." So again, our objective is to explain characters' actions. Using what we know from the text, why do you think that he was plucking the feathers and using the wax? Let's describe his actions. So for me, I would think that he's putting it together to make some sort of something, right? So he can escape. So he and his son can escape, because what else are you going to do with feathers and wax? Somehow you're going to put it together to try to help yourself get out of the tall tower. And remember, if we think back, he said that there's nothing but sharp rocks at the bottom. So in order for them to get out of their tall, tall tower, they're going to have to learn how to fly, or figure out a way how to fly, or even just float over the rocks. If that was your thought, great job. All right. It took several days to finish the work, until one morning the 2 sets of wings were ready. Daedalus had studied the movements of the birds and knew where the currents of air were. The currents is a vocab word for us, and it means strong flows of air moving in a certain direction. So he studied how the air was moving, so he knew how, when he jumped out the window with his wings that he made, where the wind was going to take them. Because why do you think that's important? Let me not tell you. Why do you think it's important to study the currents of the wind? What happens if the current of the wind is straight down? What's going to happen to Daedalus and his son? Yeah, he's going to go into the rocks. What happens if the currents are up? Then they're not going to be able to get down. The wind is going to take them up. Good. So what kind of a current would they want, would be ideal for them to have? So in my head, I think they would want one that's nice and slow and nice and even to take them all the way across all the rocks so they could get out safely. Is that what you thought too? All right. He carefully taught Icarus what he knew, adding, "We will land at the harbor over there, remove our wings, and sail away in one of the boats anchored. By the time the King Minos knows we are gone, we will be far from Crete. However, my son, follow me as I ride the wind safely down. If we are not careful and we fly too high, the sun's heat could melt our wax in our wings and plunge us down into the sea. Our friends the birds need not fear this, but we are only borrowing their skill." What do you think that means? We are only borrowing their skill. He said that the author said that the birds do not have to fear this, but we are only borrowing their skill. What skill are they borrowing? The skill to fly, right? So for the birds, will the sun melt? Do they have wax on them? No. So they're not going to melt any wax if they're flying too high or too low. But for Daedalus and his son, they had to make their wings. And so because they're borrowing their skill of flying and their wings are not real part of their body, that's something they have to worry about. Okay, look at this picture. Were we right? Did they make wings to jump like the birds and fly out? We were, good. Below their tower were dangerous rocks and crashing waves. Daedalus worried that they might not make it. He thought over every detail, and then he told his son, "It is time to regain our freedom. Come." Stepping up to the window, he drew a deep breath and leaped outward, and his wings worked. Please do not try this at home. Please do not try to pluck feathers out of a bird and try to fly. Please don't. This is a Greek myth. This is a fiction story, okay? Just want to go on record and tell you all that. It is time to regain our freedom. Come. Stepping up to the window, he drew a deep breath and leaped outward, and his wings worked. The air lifted him and held him. Looking back over his shoulder, he saw his son leap from the tower. Icarus, his son, laughed out loud at the sheer joy of flying. Lifting and dipping the tips of his wings, he turned and swirled, delighted in the wonder of it all. How would you feel if you could make wings and do that? I don't want you to try, but think of how fun it could be to be able to fly like a bird. As Daedalus glided gracefully down toward the ground, Icarus thought, "I wonder if I can make this kind of curve, or if I could do this." And he rode the winds higher and higher and farther out over the water. Let's stop and think. Remember, our objective was thinking about the character's actions, explaining the character's actions. So what is the character, first of all, right here that we're talking about? Who is the character? Is it King Minos? Because remember, he's a main character. Is it Daedalus? Or is it Icarus, Daedalus, the son? Who's the main character that we were just talking about? Yep, it was Icarus, the main character, one of the main character's sons. Good. So what is he doing? What did he decide to do? What are his actions doing? Yeah, he started to fly and be silly in the sky, even though, what did his father tell him? His father told him not to do that. So as he's flying higher and higher in the sky, what do you think is going to happen? Let's find out. Sorry, y'all, my nose is super runny today. Oh no. Let's just look at the picture for a minute. Tell your parent, what do you think happened? Or tell somebody that's sitting in the room with you. What do you think happened? This is a picture of Icarus falling. Daedalus looked back for him, but Icarus was not following behind. Eyes wide with fear, he called, "Come down!" But the boy shouted, "Look, father!" and continued his tricks in the air until all of a sudden he saw a feather loosen and drop from one of his wings. He realized He had flown too high. Ooh, let's stop and think. Who are we talking about? Who is the author of this myth talking about right now when he said he realized he had flown too high? Who is the main character that we're talking about right here? If you said Icarus, good job. Kiss your brain. The growing heat from the morning sun was melting the wax. Ooh, you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of, have you ever eaten an ice cream cone and it be like super hot outside? What happens if you're holding it and it's really, really hot outside and you're not eating it fast enough? What happens? It starts dripping, right? And getting all over your hands. So how can we make that connection with the wax? What do you think started happening when the wax started getting hot as he got higher and higher to the sun? Yeah, it started melting, right? It started dripping, which means what happens to his wings? Using the picture as evidence, what would that mean? What happened? Yep, it started falling apart. The growing heat from the morning sun was melting the wax. Icarus tried to turn and follow his father's path. However, the warming currents, remember the currents are the things of how the wind travels, and they started changing because they got warmer, carried him higher and higher. His feathers began what? What's happening in that picture? His feathers started dropping from his wings, one at a time, and then in clumps. Father, help! But Daedalus could not turn and rise fast enough to help his son. All he could do was watch. Too many feathers had fallen out and the wings could no longer support Icarus. He plummeted down, down, down into the sea. Plummeted is a vocab word. What do you think that means using the evidence from the text, that sentence, context clues? He plummeted down. What do you think that means? He plummeted or he fell straight down. Good. Daedalus was weeping. As he reached the harbor, though, he took a boat and sailed off to safety. All right. So remember, our objective today was that we would be able to describe the main characters of a myth and explain the characters' actions. So what I want you to do today is I want you to tell me who the three main characters were. And remember, spelling doesn't have to be perfect. Tell me who the three main characters were that we talked about in the myth today. And then I want you to tell me what the king did in the story. I want you to tell me what Daedalus did in the story, which was the dad, and what his son did in the story. So that is your assignment for today. All right, scholars. Well, I love you and I hope to see you soon. And I cannot wait to read all of your papers on this myth. And I hope you're excited about the mythology lesson. I wish we could be at school to do it, but this is what we got right now. All right, you guys. I love you. I will see you later. Bye.